We've got you covered all season long. Welcome to the BCSN Nation podcast.
All right, here it is. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 22, right before month number 2 of the BCSN Nation podcast, presented to you by Buffalo Wild Wings. Let's go Sports Bar. I am your host, Brandon Carnes, alongside my faithful friends here. Mike Robb to my left, Justin Feldkamp to my right. The stage is set, gentlemen, for the biggest game of this season. Maybe not high school basketball. We're talking about the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 58 set to take off. The Chiefs beating the Ravens over the weekend. The Niners come back over our darling Lions, 34-31 the final there. Super Bowl set February 11th. I want to ask you guys what your favorite Super Bowl memory is. Justin.
All right, so I'm a kid of the 90s, so sometimes when you're talking about sports, you remember your favorite players from when you were growing up.
Yeah.
Emmett Smith. Yes, You could call me a front runner. Dallas Cowboys, America's team during that time, 3 Super Bowls in 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So Emmett Smith, number 22, was my guy, beating the Steelers and the Bills and some of those Super Bowls. So he was my guy. And then as a Cincinnati native, the Bengals, Aaron Donald still gives me nightmares when they lost to the Rams a few years ago. But I think Joe Burrow and the boys will get back, give you another healthy season of Burrow. But Emmett Smith and then the Rams Bengals from a couple seasons ago.
That's you, Coach Mike Robb.
Super Bowl 49, taking it to 2015.
Okay.
When you had the Seahawks making the worst decision of all time.
Run
Marshawn.
the ball.
Not giving the ball to Marshawn Lynch. You have to run the ball to win games. And in that situation, they gave the ball to Malcolm Butler so he can go ahead and be the Super Bowl MVP. And then also before that, David Tyree. I mean, how could you ever forget the catch off the helmet? That right there gave me chills when I saw that happen. And I was like, you know what? The Patriots are special. And they went on to do special things.
They consistently did those special things for, 20 years almost? I would love to say that my favorite memory was the Bengals-Rams Super Bowl, but I was so stressed out watching that game that I barely remember any of it. So I'm going to go back to Super Bowl 41 as Devin Hester returning the opening kickoff in the Bears-Colts Super Bowl. One of the most electric players that we've ever seen play. 100 speed in Madden. He was a cheat code in and of himself. So bringing back that opening kickoff, Devin Hester is my favorite Super Bowl memory. Coming up on today's show, though, we've got our Sean's Irish Tavern Player of the Week. We've got our RBA Clip of the Week. We'll talk about a shakeup and a huge upset last Friday, and we'll see where the City League is stacked up at the top of their standings. And, of course, we'll preview our Game of the Week this week and so much more. Make sure you watch new episodes of the BCSN Nation podcast right here on BCSN every Wednesday at 4 p.m. or catch us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or head yourself over to bcsnnation.com/podcast and get us there. And make sure you follow us across all of our social media platforms at BCSN Sports, everywhere you're going to go, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Check MySpace. Maybe we're there too. First thing, though, today, we're going to get into that big shakeup last Friday atop the NLL. It was our Game of the Week last week. Findlay, then number 3 in the state, at Perrysburg in the Hive. Perrysburg, we talked about it last week, able to pull the upset. We talked about the matchup with Coach Boyce and Coach Ruckey. Their tenure and defense was going to be something that they threw at each other, and it certainly was. 40-37, the final score in our game last Friday. The huge scores we talked about, they were limited. Javonte Hill, only 13 points. Gavin Fennekin, 10 points. Austin Schultz, only 9 points. What was Perrysburg able to do, Justin, to stifle that Findlay offense?
Clean, hard defense, not only in the last few seconds, which we'll get to a little bit in the clip of the week, but across the board from beginning to end. We talked about how Coach Dave Boyce could figure out and not leave a stone unturned, and I think he just said, all right, let's admit that we might not have as much athleticism and breakaway speed as Findlay, so let's make it a half-court game. Let's get back on defense and transition, prevent those easy buckets from a streaking Javonte Hill, and I think that game plan worked, regardless if the outcome came in Perrysburg favors, which it did, but teams have not been able to keep it close against Findlay except for a couple teams all season long, and this was a tight game from beginning to end. And I like Matt Hubbard. Deion Thompson on Game Day Nation was praising Hubbard big time for doing the dirty work, getting the rebounds, good passes, one key block at the end of the game sequence there. So I think just they had composure after the game, listening to some of the sound bites and quotes and interviews from the players and coaches for Perrysburg. They knew they would have composure against a talented team. You can't let a spurt or a run demoralize you. And I think they stayed cool and calm and have played the been there, done that type of card in these tight, big-time matchups. They got the job done.
We talked about it, that this was the dream scenario for, the other teams, obviously Whitmer in the NLL, to create this chaos at top. We've seen it in the TAC. We've seen it in the City League, which we'll mention later. But now this creates a three-way tie. Before last night, obviously Perrysburg falling to Whitmer last night in their matchup on Tuesday, but it creates a three-way, chaos scenario atop the NLL, Mike.
You got to love it, though. I mean, this is what sports is about. You don't want to have just one team front run all season long. And we did have that. Findlay dominated, but you knew at some point somebody was going to get them. You have so much film out there on tape. Everybody's going to find out a chink in your armor. And Perrysburg did just that. And Whitmer, obviously they're the class of the league. And this is a team that can actually come out and dominate and take some things from this Perrysburg team. But Perrysburg did the thing that Whitmer needs to do if they want to win. They got to get rebounds, and they got to box out. And that's a weak point there for Whitmer in the post, finding a way to get there. Now with Carter Lowe settled in and to his role going to Ohio State, maybe he's going to, lock in a little bit more this season and help them down there in the paint because he's athletic and he's big.
And you look at Findlay in this scenario where they were rolling through everybody. You mentioned it. Nobody could hang with Findlay. If you are Coach Jim Ruckey and you're talking to your Findlay Trojans, how do you spin this loss? Is it good to take this loss now and get your lumps and learn?
Well, I would fall back on if I'm a coach, I wouldn't necessarily want to be 24-0 going into a district championship game or a regional semifinal game. The pressure, on 17, 18-year-old kids, all eyes and targets on them. So I'm okay with this. And the fact that you had a shot from the corner with Will Cordonier that would have tied it with 5-ish seconds to go. So it's not like you got lambasted and you just got destroyed and you didn't play well and all that. Don't get me wrong, 34% shooting and 36% shooting between these two teams. It was kind of an ugly game, a defensive mindseted game. But yeah, if I'm Coach Ruckey, I think he had the post-game comments where, we had our opportunities. We competed. I liked that sense. We had the effort. We just didn't get it done. Some shots didn't fall. And we'll look at the tape and get better. Kind of standard operation for coach speak, but at the same time, it's facts. I mean, it's the first loss they had all season long on a Friday night in the Hive, and student section was rocking, and hats off to the Hive because the players and coaches for Perrysburg said that, hey, we fed off that energy. But yeah, hostile environment, it's the type of loss that you do want heading to the latter stages of the season.
You got to also look at it, too, is they got to figure out some things where, you're only scoring 7 points in the fourth quarter. That's an issue right there for them. Obviously Perrysburg went on to score 16, but 7 points in the fourth quarter, those are the things you got to address going forward with your squad.
And that sets up a massive matchup next week, Whitmer and Findlay, the rematch, this time in Findlay. So we'll see how that plays out for the NLL. But next, we're going to get into our Sean's Irish Tavern Player of the Week. And guys, at this point, it seems like we might as well just leave this award in White House. We're stopping there. It seems like every other week. We've got Pike has won it twice. We got the other Pikes have won it as well. It's a family affair. The Benders are now getting involved in that family affair. This is Hayden Bender, 15 points on Friday in their win over Northview, 45-41. All 15 of those points coming from behind the three-point line. Gets Anthony Wayne their first Buckeye NLL win of the season. And at one point in the third quarter, Hayden Bender had 9 consecutive points for A-Dub. Obviously, as I mentioned, all behind the line. They were down 24-14 before that, and then 29-26. They only trailed by 3 afterwards. He was a huge catalyst from behind the line as they were kind of knocking down shots, even from 3. They were crazy from 3 behind three-point line, but Hayden Bender himself was really able to vault this team over a deficit that they were facing at the time.
Yeah, it's been an up-and-down season for Anthony Wayne. Traditionally, they've been a little more balanced across the board and able to compete and win some games against the fellow bigger schools in the Northern Lakes League. Not necessarily the case this year. They lost on Tuesday night against Findlay pretty sizably. But we mentioned it on the podcast a few weeks ago. We said, hey, let's find some supporting casts for Griffin Pike. He seems to be the only guy who they can rely upon to score 15, to score 20, when they need to score 25 type of thing. And that has gotten them some wins, but they can increase their win total when they're spreading the wealth. And I think this is an example of that. Hayden Bender doing a good job of knocking down shots when he was open. That's the one thing you always tell shooters. is, hey, when you're open, take the shot. Even if you've lost or missed a few in a row, like you got to shoot the ball because we believe in you. Keep that confidence level up, and Hayden Bender did it in this matchup.
He was lights out, and obviously, like I mentioned before, they needed it. 45-41, the final score, and I said the third quarter run. Like, how do you put into a third quarter run like that? Guy just comes down, knocks down 3 straight triples, really get his team back into it. How does that lift you up if you're coaching that team?
I mean, we've all watched Steph Curry. I mean, it's demoralizing when you get hit by 3-pointers like that, and that's what a game is now. And when you got a kid that can get hot like that from beyond the arc at the high school level, it's not enough timeouts to slow it down and to get things going. So, it's special to see. Obviously, they didn't get the win versus Finley, but, they're going to continue to get better.
Yeah, this is a team that we talked about it. They are going to show up every single week with pride, regardless of what the end result is going to be. Huge win for them, getting their first in the NLL Buckeye division of the season. And we'll go from a great of this week to one of our all-time greats. We mentioned last week we were going to spotlight 40 of the greatest athletes in the BCSN era, 20 on the men's, 20 on the women's side. This week we are going to St. John's Jesuit, Joey Apinonu, a great on the pitch for the Titans, a 3-year letter winner for the soccer team at St. John's, track player of the year his senior year, 18 goals, 12 assists. He was All-Ohio first team. Then he moved down to BG, where as his senior he was named BGSU's Male Athlete of the Year, as well as their Male Junior Scholar Athlete of the Year, a 2-time All-MAC selection. First team as a senior. Named to the 2022 Academic All-America First Team, which is selected by the College Sports Communicators. He was also the first ever Falcon to be selected in the first round of the MLS Super Draft and the first underclassman drafted in school history. Currently plays for FC Cincinnati. As I mentioned, he was their 22nd overall pick back in 2022. Joey Apinonu, a crazy athlete here in the BCSN era.
Yeah, hard name to pronounce, Joey Akponono. You see him here getting selected in the MLS draft, and he has just been fantastic. You saw him playing for Toledo Villa FC as well, and he's just been a tremendous player from the get-go, a clutch player in that center back position. In high school, we played more towards the front, but he scored the goals when St. John's needed him to be scored. He was a little bit under the radar, I think. You don't necessarily think of a first-round draft pick at the MLS level going to a Mid-American Conference school. Not saying that BGSU is not a high-caliber soccer program, but at the same time, there are other Power 5 schools that I think may have missed out on this guy's talent just because he kind of burst onto the scene a little bit later. But a great catch for the Falcons, and then now with FC Cincinnati coming up through the ranks, he's going to have to put in his time at that level. There's only so many positions on the field, and some top caliber players are coming now. MLS has taken that step where they're not just like the second, third, fourth tier type of team as compared to the European clubs. So MLS is gaining a little bit of steam, and Joey has been terrific from the get-go. And we like the fact that he was a local guy, and in some ways still is a local guy staying in the state of Ohio. But Joey Akponono has just been a great asset. And Mike, he was a part of a little bit of a trio there coming out of St. John's. Tyson Anderson playing football, basketball, and track, and then going on to UT. He's also down in Cincinnati playing with the Bengals, rehabbing from an injury. And then Vincent Williams, who went from St. John's to VCU, also a draft pick at the NBA level and playing with the Memphis Grizzlies, dropped 25 the other night, getting 30-plus minutes a game. So you think about the talent at that small amount of time in St. John's, 3 drafted kids, all Titans.
Go Titans, I guess, man. They dominate.
Yeah, something tells me we're going to hear a little bit more about Tyson Anderson and Vincent Williams as we roll through these top 40 athletes of the BCSN era. But while we're talking about our top athletes, make sure you check out this Friday. Our first team All-BCSN top 30 basketball list for both boys and girls will drop this Friday. We've consulted with area coaches, with BCSN Toledo and Erie play-by-play announcers, the basketball analysts, as well as our sports nightly anchors and reporters to bring you this list. We'll cut it down to the top 10 later in February, and we'll get you our top 5 first team All-BCSN basketball players later on in March. But now we're going to get to our Renewal by Anderson clip of the week. Justin fed us with the tease earlier in the show. This is at the Hive. Some great defense. We mentioned it. End of the game, clutch situation. Ryan Montgomery steps up for a 3. Stuffed. That's Matt Hubbard. We mentioned him. Montgomery able to recover. Gets it back in. Will Cordani, he's been lethal. Gavin Fennekin says, nah. As Mark Coons would say, serving up blockaroni and cheese on a Friday night.
Yep.
I mean, you don't get any more clutch and those stuffs at the end of the game.
And just moments before was Cordonier's corner shot. That's the rebound right there. So they had 3 opportunities with the clock ticking down in the final seconds and just lockdown defense. And sometimes, Mike, at this point in the game, referees want to swallow the whistle because they want to make sure that the players are making the plays. But there were clear-cut, no fouls anywhere. And this, right there, that's an opportunity where you get a little side piece of the forearm and you might hear the whistle blown.
Yep.
But it was just clean, like I mentioned, clean, hard defense, elevating. When you get up in the air, your body's got to come down. And sometimes you come down on a player, on the arm, on the elbow, on the wrist, whatever the case may be. But that was not the case for Perrysburg. Dave Boyce's boys got it done.
Absolutely. And in that situation right there, I see Montgomery go for that shot. I can guarantee you next time around, he's going to pump fake that. He's going to pump fake that and then try to go up for it again, because in that time, I think he didn't know how much time he had left on the clock.
Yeah, you see,
He just went right up for it, but he was able to retrieve it and get it back there. But again, the athleticism right there by the defense to be able to stick with it and not lose sight of a man. Although there was a man wide open in the corner over there.
Devontae Hill was praying the ball found its way over there.
Get it over here, but it wasn't enough time, and that was a great job there by Perrysburg, just suffocating the defense and doing a great job that whole fourth quarter.
Yeah, you credit Finley for being able to get their own offensive rebounds, and Montgomery to be able to find the ball back again over here and get it to Cordonier, who's been lethal from behind the arc all season.
Suffocating.
Gavin Fennekin, darn near our player of the week. He was right there in the voting, and deservedly so, making a play like that at the end of the game. A huge clutch stuff by a pair. That's Matt Hubbard and Gavin Fennekin. 40-37. That three-pointer mattered. That's the final right there.
Yeah, I see your point over there with Hill on the left, but I don't think enough time was on the clock for that. He traveled that distance, and then it would have had to be a
catch and shoot.
Fingertip.
Not even fingertip, and not even like a quality shot. So I'm okay with that. Just hats off to the defense.
Absolutely.
There. But yeah, Gavin Fennekin played well and was up there for voting. And like you mentioned, we've had a lot of Anthony Wayne. I think maybe a Perrysburg in there. But yeah, across the board, get the word out. Everybody from the TAC, from the City League, from the Catholic High School League, get some votes going. So it's just not a bunch of NLL schools. We're not throwing any shade on any of all of them are very, very deserving. I'm just saying we at BCSN love to spread the wealth across the board, but we need your help when it comes to voting for the player of the week. Friday nights, 10:30, all the way till Monday at noon.
And we make sure we spread the wealth on our TikTok. Make sure you follow us over there at BCSN Sports. Let us run your For You page. Get us to 10,000 followers. We'll get all your guys' clips posted there. I promise, not just NLL. But we're going to leave the NLL, I promise, for our student section of the week this week. Brought to you by Unison Health, a proud sponsor of high school athletics right here on BCSN. Emmanuel Christian, the Warriors come out to play. Yay. They are our student section of the week. We will get you guys your chain this Friday. Make sure you come out rocking whatever your gear is going to be on Friday. Get yourself the chain, get your photos. Make sure you are ready for Nicole to come hang out with you guys while you guys host Cardinal Stritch this Friday. Congrats, the Emmanuel Christian Warriors, our student section of the week. And thanks to Unison Health for that sponsorship. And now, guys, we're going to get into a lot of fun at the top of the City League. We've got our Final Four set for the male side of the tournament. Lima Senior, Start, Scott, they all sit at 5-1. The seeding for those three is yet to be determined. That's going to be a lot of tiebreaker stuff. Bowser also made their way in. They know they know they are the 4 seed. But the top of this league, a lot like the TAC, a lot like the NLL, like we mentioned, is they're all beating up on each other. We've got, Start has beaten Scott. Scott then beat Lima Senior. Lima Senior has beaten Start. So it's madness atop in that 4-way tournament. You really hope that, Mike, I know you hope Lima Senior and Scott end up on opposite sides of this 14 tournament.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that. That first matchup earlier in the year, I think Lima Senior felt some type of way, and then they came out steamrolling right after that. So for Scott, though, this is the squad. This is the team for them. Coach Tate, he's really got them playing really good basketball. They're a physical, athletic bunch. And I think these two teams, they have some matchup similarities. Obviously the guard play for Lima Senior is really high, but Daryl Barnett, he is a special athlete and he can make some plays out there for him as well. So seeing these two teams play, I'm excited to see if that lines up that way. But you can't count out Start. Start is still a scrappy basketball team, and Bowser said at the beginning of the year, this basketball team is sneaky athletic. They got a lot of size and athleticism, and so you can't fall asleep on them because they can pull one out on you.
The thing that I noticed in breaking this down is you mentioned how they were beating each other up, how close the games were.
Yeah,
64-59, 64-63, 45-37, 64-59 when you're talking about that trio of Lima Sr. Start and Scott, head coach Quincy Simpson, Tareen Warren at start. You mentioned Coach Tate and then Fred Kugler at 𝗏𝗏, all doing solid jobs and trying to get some positioning not only within the league, but get that RPI up with some quality wins to get a better chance at a better seed and a better draw there when it comes to the postseason. But aside from those close games, these teams have relied upon, for start, Josiah Jefferson, Ja'Kai Jefferson, Daryl Barnett Jr., who just carried over from football, future UT Rocket on the football side. He's been playing well. Mario Peters, too. And then two of the guys that you're talking about all season long, Mike, with 𝗏𝗏, Cody Thames and Vincent Reed, are going to have to continue to grow at a rapid pace in these last few weeks if they want to cash in on an opportunity to maybe get to that championship game for a City League title, which will be carried. We're going to carry the boys' side semifinals, both on BCSN app, and then the championship game as well. I believe into February, Tuesday, Thursday, the semifinals, and then the finals. But yeah, those are the key players to look for in those matchups.
And credit to 𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏 is a team. They slid in. They're 3-3 record, but they were able to beat Rogers, is who they were kind of tied with going into last week. And their head-to-head win over Rogers, is really what put them into this. We talked about, the talent that Rogers had, and we thought maybe they would be that fourth team. But credit to 𝗏𝗏 because they beat Rogers. They put themselves in the scenario to be here. And now you've just got to be able to continue, as you said, to rapidly grow and be able to go like, hey, maybe we don't have the guys, but if we scheme this, we play the right way. We talk about, Perrysburg, the way they were able to beat a team like Findlay that maybe don't match up great against, but you know how to play against them. You're able to shut down things they want to do. That could be the real difference for 𝗏𝗏 going into this tournament.
Yeah, looking forward to it. 𝗏𝗏 at points and times, they've been able to put up a lot of points in their schedule. And just looking at it now, it's a lot of close games. You got some overtime victories and some overtime losses. So they're going to play you tough. And I think that, if we do end up seeing 𝗏𝗏 and start in that first round, that could be a scary game for the Start Spartan.
I'm curious to see with Lima Sr. because Coach Quincy Simpson, traditionally, his teams continue to get better. He's had some Division I talents in the past handful, 5, 6, 7 years that have really been the go-to focal who could just get a bucket whenever he would want. They don't necessarily have that senior-laden veteran all-star status on their team this year, but at the same time, with Sean Foster, Isaiah Wilson, those two guys can get you 15 points on a nightly basis or even more. And if come tournament time, it's not necessarily about spreading the wealth. You got to find a way to survive in advance. And if you got to get your guy to get 31 so we get over the hump and win by 1, then so be it.
Yeah, Sean Foster, he's definitely going to wake up. I got to watch him in person a little bit earlier this season, and I said, this kid is special, and they got 3 more years with him.
So that's going to be a lot of fun when we get to it later coming up in February. But this week, we're going to focus on our Dunn Chevy in Oregon Game of the Week. And guys, it seems like this is something we can say darn near every single week. A huge matchup coming up in the TAC. This week, it's Toledo Christian at Maumee Valley. That's going to be a 7:15 live on BCSN this Friday. Toledo Christian, they're going crazy right now. 14-1 on the season, number 2 in the D4 polls. They're on a 10-game win streak since that loss, which was to Maumee Valley back in December. Average margin of victory, 21 points per game. Maumee Valley, they're 11-4 on the season. Also, only one loss in the TAC, that coming to East Emmanuel Christian. They were to beat TC, as I said, 63-57 back in December. Started 9-0 on the season. They're 2-4 since. Granted, one of those losses coming to La Lumiere, which we know the talent that team has, obviously with Jerry Easter coming back. Mike, how do you see this thing playing out?
Well, I had to just check the schedule and make sure I was right. This could have been a crazy game, a crazy off the top, just because if this was one game back, this would have been a senior night here for Maumee Valley. Oof. And really had this game set up to be a really barn burner. But I think with the schedule they've played, obviously losing to Jerry Easter and going through some of those things, I think Maumee Valley has a shot at taking down TC again. Just they're scrappy. Obviously, TC plays a great team ball, but with their 2 stars, CJ Majors finding a way to get things done. They understand where they're at in this race here. They understand that Toledo Christian is the biggest rival. They got done playing over there recently. bringing this thing back home, and the turmoil that they've been through over the past couple weeks, it really hasn't sat well with them. So I think this is a group of seniors knowing that this is their chance to go out on top. But Toledo Christian is not going to let that happen when you got Gaston out there again scoring the points that he is.
Yeah, you mentioned the 4 out of 6 losses. Those losses, Emmanuel Christian in overtime to Perrysburg, a bigger school, Division I team. Scott, a bigger school in Maumee Valley, and then La Lumiere, like you mentioned, kind of a showcase game for a homecoming type of game for Jerry Easter Jr. But this matchup is going to be one of several games in the last 2-3 weeks that dictate and determine who is going to win this TAC title. But this is a juicy matchup, as good as it gets. We got the Walleye on BCSN, so this game is relegated to the community channel. But again, all of our games are live on the BCSN app. But you talk about the coaches in this one. Tyler Boris, learned under the tutelage of Dave McWinney for so many years, for 2 decades at TC. He's kind of just continued on, and he's got lucky with this group of top caliber veteran players who you just can count off. There's no question marks like, what type of team is going to show up tonight? That is not a worry or a concern for Toledo Christian, because you got Kanye Gaston, the heart and soul of the team. Yep. You got Kalon Butler. You got Carter Kester. You got Xander Hessen, 4 guys averaging 11 or more points. You talk about spreading the wealth. I mean, there's 44 points right there. A defense can't key on one guy. Someone else can go off. But on the flip side, Dante Fleming, the head coach for Maumee Valley, he's got Amani Dickerson, just surpassed 1,000 career points on Tuesday night. And then CJ Majors, who's been a consistent force for them all season long and even back to last year as well. So he's going to get some college looks and possibly take his game to the next level coming out of this one. But Maumee Valley just on the outside of the top 10 in the state rankings. And then you mentioned Toledo Christian, number 2 in the state. So I don't necessarily think that many people thought at the beginning of the season that TC, Maumee Valley, and Emmanuel Christian, 3 teams, had the potential to go on deep tournament runs. But it looks like we got that in the cards this year.
Oh, and they're getting the respect, obviously, in the state polls. We see, like I said, Toledo Christian number 2, Maumee Valley at that 12 spot. But the RPI for both of these teams, Maumee Valley number 3 in the D4 Northwest District in the RPI, where you got Toledo Christian, obviously number 1 in that respect. But you talked about the scoring, right? Dickerson and Majors both sitting about 20 points per game for Maumee Valley. Kieran Stokes about 12 points per game. But you mentioned you're going to get plenty of the points. The leadership that you're going to have on this Toledo Christian team. Should be a lot of fun. Make sure you guys tune into the community channel or the BCSN app to check that out. What else we got going on Friday, you might ask? Well, let's see that graphic. Justin, let's see what's going on Friday.
A word of the wise, get there early for that Maumee Valley game, because not a ton of room in there. No. So if you want a good seat, if you get there late, don't plan to sit down. You're going to have to standing room only. But yeah, we got that game live on the BCSN app, and then also Southview versus Start, an interesting NLL City League crossover matchup there. Napoleon taking on Perrysburg. Napoleon has been solid. Perrysburg has been solid as well. Looking forward to that matchup. Scott taking on Bowser. We just broke that down within the City League there just moments ago. Ottawa Hills taking on Northwood. Then we're going north of the border over to the Wolverine State for Skyline taking on Bedford, and then Summerfield at Whiteford. So all of these game broadcasts live on the BCSN app. The boys at Game Day Nation will be checking in, live look-ins with all of these games. And then in addition to that, we got a bunch of different games that will have videographers and reporters out at. So those will all be included as well on Game Day Nation at the end of that show, and an inside Game Day Nation overtime with Mark Kuntz, Deion Thompson, and Rhett Boyd. And student section of the week, we mentioned Emmanuel Christian. Carly Ford stepping in and covering that for us this week. So we'll be looking forward to that as well. In addition to what you mentioned earlier, halfway through the show here, Brandon, is first team all BCSN brought to you by 𝗦𝗽liche, the top 30 boys and 30 girls. We do our due diligence with all that. So keep in mind, all of our viewers, we don't just slap that together. We get votes and we get compelling arguments from coaches and analysts, everyone who you just mentioned earlier in the podcast, and then we'll narrow it down to 10 February 23rd, and then the final 5 on March 15th.
Mike, you got any last words? One of those matchups that excites you?
Hey, well, you know what? It's definitely going over to see the Bowser game. Going over to Bowser, seeing City League matchups. I love City League hoops. Catch me there.
City League Hoops. This time, Mike Stradamus strikes again. We'll catch you right here next Wednesday, February 7th at 4 p.m. on BCSN. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, BCSNNation.com. Make sure you follow Justin on Twitter at Justin Feldkamp. We got at Coach_Mike Robb. Follow myself at Carnes Brandon. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you right here, same bat time next week.